Welcome to the eShopperReviews podcast, episode 3. This is the podcast for June 2021. I'm Jen Ip.
And I'm Jake McNeil.
For those new to this podcast, eShopperReviews is a subreddit on reddit.com where Jake reviews games on the Nintendo Switch platform, and you can find the subreddit at the URL reddit.com/r/eShopperReviews. We currently have over 1,300 reviews and counting, and we are supported by your donations on our Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. This month's sponsors are Lee, Andy Miller, Stove, Reddit user Wonder Ponder, Johannes, Ilya Zarev, Eli Goodman, and KC. Thank you all for helping to keep the reviews coming. Now, on to the discussion topics for today. Our Patreon voted game is Famicom Detective, and
Famicom Detective Club, The Girl Who Stands Behind, and Famicom Detective Club, The Missing Heir.
Oh my god, that's such a huge mouthful.
Well, they're two games. And I was like, because these are both somewhat less expensive games, and they're also kind of a paired set, let me make this one of the options, and if people vote for it, then I will review both games. And people ended up choosing that over the other options, so that is what I will be reviewing, and that review will probably be up later this week.
I might steal that game from you because I'm actually interested in how it plays too.
Okay.
But, yeah, I didn't think there were two games. I'm surprised.
The first game is The Girl Who Stands Behind, and the second game, The Missing Heir, is... Oh, no, I did that out of order. The first game is The Missing Heir, and The Girl Who Stands Behind is actually a prequel that was released afterward.
Oh, okay.
But as I understand it, I've not played them yet. They are visual novel style games with a kind of detective sort of theme. I hear that they're somewhat similar to the Ace Attorney series games.
Okay. Any expectations?
I've heard they're good, but I try to reserve judgment until I actually play it.
The advertisements I've seen for it are decent. The artwork looks nice.
You might not be aware, our listeners might be, but these are actually remakes of old Famicom games, games on the original Nintendo system that were never released in the United States originally. These were Japan-only games, and this is the first time these two games are going to be coming to the United States. So they're getting full-on remakes, all the art is being redone, all the music, all the everything, so
it looks gorgeous.
Again, reserving judgment. I haven't really seen too much on these. I just know what I've heard.
Okay. So news for the last month. Nintendo reveals their profits in 2020 were the highest in their company's history. Why do you think that is?
Okay, first of all, to give you an idea, this is a company that is, I don't know exactly the age, but I know it's over 100 years old. Even before they made video games, they were a toy company, they were a Japanese playing card company, they made a kind of Japanese-style playing card called, and I hope I don't butcher this pronunciation, Hanafuda. I have no idea how to play it, I just know that it's apparently a popular game in Japan. And I think at one point they even owned a chain of love hotels.
I wonder if they still do.
I don't know. I kind of have to feel like with their family-friendly image, they might have moved away from that.
Yeah, can we even talk about it on this podcast? I guess we can't.
We're not saying what it is.
Yeah.
Although, it's, as I understand it, it's misleading because it's just supposed to be a kind of convenient... If you need a place to stay and don't know how long you need to stay, they charge by the hour instead of by the day. And apparently their rates are pretty competitive. Not necessarily saying Nintendo's rates are. I'm just saying love hotels in general.
Yeah.
I know that you watched a YouTube special on those at one point.
Yes, they are so interesting. Okay.
Anyway, so in Nintendo's entire history of existing... this last fiscal year, which I believe ran from the end of March, early April 2020 to end of March, early April 2021, was Nintendo's most I don't want to say most successful because there are different ways of measuring success, but they had the highest profits of any year in history.
They made lots of moolah.
And the clear reason behind that, well, two clear reasons. Number one, Animal Crossing did very, very well.
Yep.
And number two was they did very well in the COVID economy. Everyone was stuck at home. Everyone was wanting some form of escapism. And Animal Crossing in particular came out at just the right time for everyone to find this nice, happy, cheerful, easygoing game to get their minds off of all of the bad stuff that was going around everywhere else.
It pretty much was mimicking real life in a way.
What do you mean?
I mean, you had a mortgage to pay down.
Well, I mean, that's always been a staple of the series.
Oh, yeah.
But even the way that the series does it, it's basically, oh yeah, you pay when you can, no pressure, no worries. Go and socialize with your neighbors, go and do interior decorating, go and, you know, it's...
And if you don't log in for a week, we'll guilt trip you. I remember that, okay?
Yeah.
That is a running gag.
But I mean, they've actually toned down those elements in the more recent games.
Oh,
now
really?
It's more along the lines of, oh, you haven't been around for a while, I've missed you. Like, it is...
Wow.
It is such a... It is a very lighthearted and easygoing game, and I think a lot of people needed that in the last year.
Yeah.
But I mean, even aside from that, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe continued to sell ridiculously well for a game that's as old as it is. Nintendo's other titles all did very well, but yeah, it was just... They had the right game at the right time and captured the cultural zeitgeist, as it were, at a time when everyone needed something to capture their attention to take it away from other issues. And I think that's what a lot of people are thinking was Nintendo just had a very lucky convergence of events for them. Granted, for most people, the last year was very unlucky. It was not a great year for most people, but Nintendo happened to be in the right place, the wrong place at the right time, I suppose.
Okay. Tell me about Game Builder Garage.
This was a game that Nintendo announced this month. It's going to be coming out in the month of June. It's going to be one of the games that we're putting up for a vote for the month of June for our patrons. If patrons want me to review this game, this is going to be one of the options. And Game Builder Garage is a game where you can basically create your own little video game. And Nintendo's had functionality very similar to this in a lot of the Nintendo Labo games. The little cardboard construction projects. Yeah. They would have this little garage app on the side where you could create your own games or apps to work with the cardboard construction projects that you've made. And they actually got more and more elaborate over time, to the point where when they made the Nintendo Labo VR, they actually had a pretty elaborate, well-designed game construction kit included with that. And Game Builder Garage looks like it's basically taking that whole idea a step further and leaving behind all of the cardboard stuff. So now it's just primarily focusing on a fairly accessible design your own game kind of concept.
I'm not sure how well that's going to do, because kids right now are playing Roblox, which is very similar to it, and it's available on the PC. So I'm very curious how this garage game is going to work.
I haven't played Roblox myself. I don't know much about it.
It's basically the same concept that Nintendo is doing.
Well, I mean, there are multiple games that are kind of like this. Like on the PlayStation, there's Dreams, and to some extent, there's also Little Big Planet. Technically, on the Nintendo Switch, there's games like Mario Maker 2, where you can kind of create your own Mario game. This one is a bit more malleable. At the same time, I think Nintendo is positioning it to be extremely user-friendly, like to really capture the people who are just getting into the concept of game design.
And coding and...
Well, there's no actual like writing code in this game. It's all done with a GUI interface, a graphical user interface, where you're moving blocks around, connecting them with cords. Press this button to do this thing.
Right. But that is, at its core, kind of what coding is about.
Yeah, it's an introduction to the concepts without a lot of the complicated stuff.
Exactly.
So Nintendo's going to be releasing this in the month of June, and I guess we'll see how it turns out.
All right. So, Super Mario Party receives an online update, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe receives a minor update. Anything you want to say about that?
So, people have been saying since Super Mario Party came out years ago that it needed updates. It needed more content. It needed better online. And I think people are just about given up on this game getting updates by this point. It's a great game. What's there is great, but it's lacking a lot of the stuff that people kind of want to see in this game. And Nintendo surprised everyone by adding an update this last month, which greatly improves the online play. Where previously you could only play about 10 of the little mini games online, now I think something like 70 or 80 of the mini games are playable online.
Ooh, we need to try that out.
Yeah, at some point I'm going to have to re-review that game. I actually have a growing list of re-reviews that I'm going to need to do at some point. Maybe we'll do a re-review week or something.
Maybe. That'd be cool.
And Mario Kart 8 Deluxe received an update, but this one was a lot more minor. This one, geez, I don't even remember what was in it. It was something small, like just increasing online stability and performance or something like that.
Makes sense. What's this Skyward Sword Amiibo controversy?
So, Nintendo is going to be re-releasing The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword on the Nintendo Switch later this year with a HD remaster, re-release, however you want to put it. And people are already a bit on the fence about this, in part because they're charging more for this re-release than the original game, which came out on the Wii, I think something like a decade ago.
Yes.
On top of that, the original game came with one of their Wii Remote Pros. So it came with a controller. It cost less. And on top of that, this is one of the less beloved 3D Zelda games. I won't say that it's hated. It's not a bad game from what I understand. I actually have not played this one. It is one of the few Zelda games I have not played.
I thought you played all the Zelda games.
No, this one I have not played. And I mean, I think most people haven't played all of the Zelda games. Like, if you want to count the old Philips CDI games with the terrible video, and trust me, it's a horror show.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
But a lot of people missed out on Skyward Sword because it kind of came toward the end of the Wii's lifespan. And it also required this Wii Remote Plus accessory that not everyone knew about or had. That's part of the reason why they packaged it in. But I think by that point, a lot of people had checked out of the Wii. It had started to lose its luster.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Nintendo is re-releasing this game on the Nintendo Switch, and they have redone the controls to work with the Joy-Con controllers. And in addition to this, they are going to be releasing alongside it an amiibo designed for the game. It's going to feature Zelda herself along with, I think the bird is called Loftwing. It's this giant bird that in the game Link uses to travel around. Well, the idea behind the amiibos is that they are used in conjunction with the games to do something in the games. For Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, for example, you could use pretty much any of the amiibos to get a chest full of like random items, or you could use Zelda series amiibos to get like special Zelda themed armors, to unlock like Wolf Link as a companion.
Oh, that's cool.
Different things like that. That's the idea behind the amiibos. But with the Loftwing amiibo, what they're doing is they're tying it to some improved functionality in the game.
Oh.
Which is Normally in the game, when you're in one of the dungeons, you can come up to one of these bird statues that can let you summon the loftwing bird, and it'll take you back to like your home base, so to speak. And with this amiibo, apparently what they're doing is you can use the amiibo to summon the loftwing bird anywhere. You don't have to do it at one of those statues.
Okay.
Basically making it into an easy fast travel feature. And a lot of people were upset because, you know, they are making an improvement to the game that a lot of people will appreciate, but locking it behind this
amiibo.
Actually really pricey amiibo. Normally the amiibos go for, I think it's like 12, 13, 14, something like that. This one I think they're selling for 24 or 25. What? It's a large amiibo. It has a really large, elaborate figure.
Okay, I mean...
So, I mean, if you're looking at it as, you know, a collectible figurine, that's not too terrible. If you're looking at it as if I want to do everything in this game, I need to spend $25 more. That's...
And how much is the game base-wise?
I think they're selling it for a full $60. Yep. So a lot of people are...
I'm upset.
not happy with that.
I'm upset about it.
Now, for me, I feel like this has always been what amiibos have done. They've always locked features behind buying these figurines. But for me, I felt like it was somewhat sort of okay because you could use the figures for multiple games. You could take the Link amiibo and use it in Smash Brothers. You could use it in Mario Kart. You could use it in the Zelda games. So you buying this one figure wasn't just if I want to play this one thing in this one game, I have to buy this one figure. It was, if I have this figure, I can unlock this in this game, and this game, and this game, and this game. But for this $25 figure, it looks like it's just going to work for this one game.
I mean, maybe they'll update it.
I doubt it. Now, Nintendo has done something similar to this in the past, like for The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, another Zelda game on the Nintendo Switch. They made a special Link's Awakening Link amiibo, which would unlock features in the custom dungeon creator thing in that game. But that was a fairly minor part of the game. And I don't think a lot of people felt like they missed out too much with that.
I don't think so.
But again, this is kind of what Nintendo's been doing, is they've been increasingly tying these features to one-off amiibos. And at this point, I think people are finally starting to take notice and getting a bit unhappy with the direction things are going. And I kind of feel it's understandable. At the same time, from people who have played this game, as I understand it, like I said, I've not played this yet myself, the bird statues that I talked about are pretty common throughout the game. They're pretty well distributed. And as I understand it, Skyward Sword is not a particularly hard Zelda game. So the utility of this additional content is somewhat questionable to begin with. It's not something that is going to be a make or break thing for this game.
Okay.
But I think it's just one of those, final straw on the pile kind of, or sorry, the last straw sort of things where, it's like, this is a game that originally came with a controller. It's not going to now. They're going to be charging $10 more for it. They're not really adding too much to the game as far as what we can tell. And what little they are adding to it, some of it's going to be locked behind an additional $25 figure. I think it's just one thing on top of another, and people are just getting sick of it.
I think it's a bad move, but, So, new batch of games released on the Nintendo Switch Online system and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System app.
So this month, the Nintendo Entertainment System app and the Super Nintendo Entertainment System app on Nintendo Switch Online got technically 5 additional games. And a lot of people were displeased at this batch of games.
I mean, I'm looking at it and I'm kind of like,
So here's the thing. There are still a few highly beloved games that Nintendo has not yet released on Nintendo Switch Online. In particular, Earthbound and Earthbound Origins. People are wondering why the heck Nintendo's taken forever to release these. Super Mario RPG is another big one.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a few even lesser known ones that it's kind of like, why has Nintendo taken so long to release these? Like Star Tropics 2 and Kirby's Block Ball. Kirby's Avalanche, I think, isn't on there yet. And I might be mistaken on Kirby's Avalanche. And yet Nintendo, when they do release new games to these services, which they're doing less and less often, I think they're doing it every 2 months now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, something like 4 or 5 games every 2 months is not very much. And when they release, you know, really relative unknowns, it's starting to frustrate people. And I think that is some reason to be frustrated with this, but another part of the reason to be frustrated with this is, out of the 5 games that they released this last month, 3 of them were already available in some other form on the Nintendo Switch.
Ooh.
So the 5 games that they released on the Nintendo Entertainment System app, they released a game called Jajamaru-kun. On the Super Nintendo Entertainment System app, they released Baseball Simulator 1000, Joe and Mac, Magical Drop 2, Spanky's Quest, and Super Mario Kart SP. But previously, Magical Drop 2 was already available in the ACA Neo Geo series.
Mm-hmm.
So Joe and Mac is already available on, I think it's like the Joe Cool Arcade or something like that. I've forgotten the name of it.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Cool or Joe Danger or something ridiculous like that. And Super Mario Kart is actually already available on the Super Nintendo app on Nintendo Switch Online. This version of Super Mario Kart they made specifically for the service is basically an easy shortcut that unlocks all of the content in the game, so you don't have to unlock, you know, all the maps and all of the different game modes.
Okay.
Of the games released on the Nintendo Switch Online apps this month, I will have put out a review, hopefully to go up alongside this podcast. The 3 that we've actually already seen on the Switch are decent. Joe and Mac is okay. It's a decent action platformer. Magical Drop 2 is actually a pretty decent puzzle game, although the Neo Geo version I think is going to be preferable to this version. But if you're already subscribed to Nintendo Switch Online, you can't be free.
Mm-hmm.
And Super Mario Kart, of course, is an epic game. It's legendary. You know, it's not necessarily the best in the series, but it's the first game in the series, and it's great. It's still great. And hey, not having to unlock all the content, that's also pretty cool. But as far as the new content here, Ninja Jajamaru-kun it's bad. I'll just say that. It is old in a bad way. The frame rates are bad. The hit detection is bad. The controls are sluggish. It's just not good. Baseball Simulator 1000 is okay.
I might have played it. It sounds familiar.
Well, it's an old Super Nintendo game.
I might have.
Okay.
I don't know.
It's okay. I feel like more modern baseball games have addressed some of the issues that I had with this one. Like, when you are playing the outfield, someone hits the ball and you can't see your outfielders when you're supposed to be moving them to intercept the ball. You know, I feel like, so that's an issue.
Yeah, that's bad.
And that's the kind of stuff you deal with here. And finally, Spanky's Quest is kind of... I'm sorry?
Spank.
Oh, jeez. Hey, we're trying to keep it family friendly now.
It is family friendly. Spank.
Anyway, this is kind of an arcade style action platformer. Again, this is okay, but I feel like it's a bit slow paced, and the way that you attack enemy characters in this game is a bit indirect and strange. It's not a bad game, but it's not a great one. And I feel like overall, people are pretty justified for feeling underwhelmed by this batch of Nintendo Switch Online games.
I don't blame them considering what you've just said. It doesn't sound too great.
Yeah. I mean, there's some good stuff to play in there. Like I said, Magical Drop 2 is good. Joe and Mac is good. Super Mario Kart, of course, is good. But a lot of people might have already played these in some other form on the Switch.
Okay, so tell me about Sonic the Hedgehog's 30th anniversary event.
Okay. This was one of a few anniversary events that happened this last month where Sega announced a slew of new Sonic the Hedgehog content. They announced a lot of TV shows, they announced a music concert, and various other things, and they announced a few games as well. Coming to Nintendo Switch is going to be Sonic Colors Ultimate. This is a remake of a Nintendo Wii game that actually looks like it could be pretty good. Apparently, it was pretty well received. This is another game where I have not played the original, so it'll be interesting to try this one out for the first time. You know, I'm sure a lot of people will be trying it out for the first time, but
Right.
Wii owners might be familiar with this game. It's coming to other platforms as well, but it's also coming to Switch. They announced a collection called Sonic Origins. They did not announce, They did not announce what platforms it will be coming to, but it could be coming to Nintendo Switch.
I would hope it
pretty
comes
reasonable.
to Switch.
And this collection includes Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Sonic and Knuckles, and Sonic CD. And the big thing for this collection is Sonic the Hedgehog 3, because when Sega re-releases Sonic the Hedgehog games, they usually skip 3 because there are music rights issues to this game. Apparently, the Michael Jackson estate owns the rights to the music in Sonic the Hedgehog 3. That's as I understand it, yeah, because I believe Michael Jackson helped to write or produce the music for that game.
That's insane.
I might be incorrect on that. I haven't done my research, but that's as I understand it.
Well, before we publish this, we'll double check.
So, as I understand it, I think they've said that they're going to be remaking, like, completely doing a new soundtrack for Sonic the Hedgehog 3 for this collection. However, on the Nintendo Switch, the only games in this collection that Nintendo Switch owners have gotten are the first 2 Sonic games. Switch owners have not yet gotten Sonic 3, Sonic and Knuckles, or Sonic CD. So if this game is released on the Nintendo Switch, and again, we do not know for sure that it will be. Sega has been not forthcoming about that. But if they do, this will be the first chance for Nintendo Switch owners to play those 3 Sonic games. And finally, Sega announced an unnamed Sonic game coming in 2022. They did a very brief teaser trailer. We don't know a title. It's presumably going to be a new 3D game, but we don't even know that for sure. We just know there's going to be a new Sonic game. It's coming out in 2022. It's coming out on multiple platforms, and Nintendo Switch is going to be one of them.
Okay, so here's a question for you. Out of the characters in the Sonic universe, who's your favorite?
The characters?
Yeah, the characters.
You're always interested in asking about favorite characters.
I mean,
I suppose I usually like playing as Tails just because I like the added mobility of being able to fly. Although, from what I've seen of Sonic 3, they did a good job balancing that out, where Sonic's speed allows him to propel himself up farther into places the others can't get, and Knuckles' climbing allows him to get into
Knuckles is my favorite
places. But I think overall, I prefer Tails myself.
Tails is my second favorite.
All right.
Okay. Next up, we have Dragon Quest 35th Anniversary Event.
Okay.
And you were pretty excited about this. I remember.
I mean, I was interested in it. I was curious to see what they'd have. Personally, there were games that I really, really, really hoped that we'd see sequels for that we did not.
Okay, so what did we see?
So, first of all, they announced a mobile game. I've already forgotten the name of it. I apologize.
But there's a mobile game.
Yeah, it's not coming to Switch, at least presumably not coming to Nintendo Switch. But it looks like it's some sort of puzzle game involving matching up erasers of Dragon Quest characters. Mm-hmm. Unusual concept, but I don't know. It could be a fun little puzzle game. All of the rest of the games that they revealed in this presentation, they did not say what platforms they were coming to. And in many cases, they didn't even say for sure whether or not they would be coming to the United States.
Oh!
This was an international presentation, so presumably most of these games will be coming to Western territories. Mm-hmm. So one of the games that they specified, they do not have any plans for a Western release. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of skipping ahead here. So Dragon Quest X has been available in Japan for quite a while now, including on the Nintendo Switch. But they have never brought this stateside. This is a massively multiplayer online game.
It's an MMO!
Yes. And so there is a Dragon Quest MMO on the Nintendo Switch right now if you live in Japan, but they have no plans to bring it to America. And one of the things that they announced was some new content for that game, which we Americans will not be seeing. Oops. But in addition to that, they announced a new version of Dragon Quest X, or a new take on it, called Dragon Quest X Offline, which has a different visual presentation. Presumably, it's going to be using the same storyline or something. I don't know. Mm-hmm. This one, they didn't specify whether it's going to be coming to the United States. And again, like all of these games, they're not saying which platforms it's coming to. So it might be coming to Switch. It might not be. Who knows?
Okay.
But it looks like it could be good. Like, you know, most Dragon Quest games will look like they could be good.
I am actually not familiar with the series whatsoever.
I'm not terribly familiar with it myself. Mm-hmm. I only know the games that I've played, which I reviewed the first 3 Dragon Quest games when they were re-released on Nintendo Switch. Those were ports of mobile versions of the games.
Okay.
I've played Dragon Quest XI on the Nintendo Switch, which was very good. However, I think the highlights were Dragon Quest Builders 1 and 2 on the Nintendo Switch. Those are kind of like a cross between a JRPG and Minecraft. But We're getting a bit off topic here. So getting back to the Dragon Quest event, one of the other games that they announced was Dragon Quest Treasures, which is a kind of spin-off of some of the characters that were in Dragon Quest XI. It's kind of showing an adventure that they had when they were little kids. And this is also...
Oh, that's cute.
Kind of loosely attached to the Dragon Quest Monsters sub-series. But I guess with a focus on collecting treasure. Another game that they announced in this event was Dragon Quest III HD 2D. And this one, I think, is one that a lot of people are really interested in. Because, so Dragon Quest III, like I said, already available on Nintendo Switch. This is a remake of that game that is done using the same game engine that we see being used in Octopath Traveler and in Project Triangle Strategy. It's, Square Enix is dubbing this the HD 2D engine. And I don't know if you've seen any of these games yet.
Some of them, yes.
Okay, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's kind of a really, really original take on doing an old style, like 16-bit RPG using 3D graphics, but maintaining that kind of 16-bit look to it. Right. And, you know, making some really nice visual effects with water.
It's pretty.
And
it's very pretty.
So they're doing a remake of Dragon Quest III in that style. And it looks just as gorgeous as the other games that have done this style. Honestly, if Square Enix wants to go ahead and remake all of their 16-bit RPGs in this style, I would be thrilled. Of course, what I'm really hoping for is remakes of Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger in this style, but I have to dream.
They're remaking 7, so maybe, I don't know.
Well, yeah, not in that style and not on Nintendo Switch, but yeah.
Okay.
And finally, the other game that they announced in this event was Dragon Quest XII, The Flames of Fate, and all we got for this was a logo and a title, but I'm sure a lot of people are excited because Dragon Quest XI was fantastic, and I'm sure 12 will be good too. They're kind of trying to sell this as a more adult Dragon Quest title, and I have no idea what that means.
Okay.
But I'm guessing that, you know, they're going for a darker plot or something. It's again, all we have to go on is what little they've said about it in a logo. We don't even know if it's coming to Nintendo Switch. However, because 11 came to Switch, hopefully 12 will as well.
I would assume so. Okay, so release dates for Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Pokemon Shining Pearl is going to be November 19th, 2021. And the one I'm curious and excited about is Pokemon Legends Arceus, which is going to be released on January 28th, 2022.
Yeah, Nintendo surprised everyone with these announcements this month. And I think what really surprised everyone... Okay, first of all, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl coming out in mid to late November. Pretty much everyone expected that, I think.
Yes, a holiday release.
Making Pokemon titles a holiday release, that's expected. What I think a lot of people were surprised about, though, was Pokemon Legends Arceus being released in late January. I think
that surprised me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people looked at the trailer that was released for this game previously, and like, this game looks like it has a lot of potential. Like, it's really exciting, the prospect of actually seeing what looks like an open world Pokemon title for the first time. I
don't believe it's going to be open world. I
don't know. We haven't seen much of it, so It's hard to say.
I will be very surprised if it plays like Breath of the Wild. I will be astonished.
I get the feeling it's going to be its own thing, but it looks like it's going to be open world. I think they're actually advertising it as open world, but I might be mistaken in that.
Well, I guess...
but I think one of the things that people were surprised about was, while the trailer looks promising, it looks like it has a lot of potential, one of the things that people noticed was that the trailer also looked kind of rough.
Yes, it did.
Like, animations were not great.
The environment looked just not what I would expect for a Switch.
So, I feel like people felt like this was an incomplete build, or like maybe it was just early footage. We don't know how far along the game is. We don't know how far along it was when that trailer was released. Apparently... it must be pretty far along at this point, because it's going to be released a lot earlier than people expected. I think people were expecting this to come out sometime in March, so that it would be like right before the end of their fiscal year, and they could have a big title for the end of their fiscal year.
Right.
But apparently it's coming out sooner than that, which
I'm not surprised, because there aren't any new Pokemon in this, right? They're just kind of like taking bits from this generation and this generation.
As I understand it, it's not going to have any new Pokemon, but it's a completely different style of game than what they've done before. Now, I think there are a few things that are surprising about this. Number one, again, people were thinking that this game was not as far along as apparently it is. But number two, January is normally a pretty slow month for most game consoles, but also for Nintendo. So for this... Let's just say it. This is a major title, and for a major title to come out in what is usually the slowest month of the year is pretty surprising. But on top of that, that leaves the question of, what are they doing in March? Is March going to be when Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 comes out? Do they have some other big plan for that? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
We'll find out soon. It's coming up. Okay, so Electronic Arts buys Metalhead Software, which are the creators of Super Mega Baseball, and Codemasters, makers of multiple racing game franchises. Why'd you put this in here?
So I try to put major news events in our little list to read here. And while Electronic Arts is, of course, not Nintendo, a lot of the games that these companies make have been on Nintendo Switch and will possibly be affected by it. Metalhead Software, like you said, makes the Super Mega Baseball series. And there is a strong argument to be made that these are the best baseball games on the Nintendo Switch right now.
Okay.
They're kind of indie titles. A lot of people haven't heard of them. And they have this funny, like, super deformed look to them. But they're actually incredibly good baseball games. Like, they are, even though they have a silly look to them, they play somewhat like a simulation style game. They have really good gameplay. They're very accessible, so, younger players can still play them and enjoy them. And I think there are a lot of people out there who have played baseball games would argue that this game is probably second only to Sony's MLB The Show series when it comes to the best baseball games currently on the market.
Wow.
Like, these are really good baseball games. And so Electronic Arts bought the developer of these games. It's a question now of, will they continue making Super Mega Baseball? Will EA use these developers to make a more professional looking baseball series? Who knows? The other company that they bought was Codemasters, and this is a company that's known for making really top-notch racing games, in particular off-road racing games, like they make the Dirt series.
Oh, okay.
And I feel like this is kind of major because whenever you have a big AAA game publisher buying smaller game studios, it's always news to begin with, but in particular when it comes to EA buying out smaller studios, there's always a part of me that kind of worries a bit.
Yeah, you're not the only one. I kind of feel that way too.
Because it's like, you look at the history of EA buying out smaller studios, and it's like, when was the last time you saw a game made by Maxis, the studio that makes SimCity and The Sims and all of that?
It's been a while.
When's the last time you saw a new game from, like Bullfrog Studio, or, when's the last time you saw a new Command and Conquer game since EA bought out the company that made those? When's the last time you saw, and
EA has a reputation.
They have a reputation.
And we more or less know what it's about.
And it's like, you can see this now with companies like BioWare, where it's like, BioWare makes the Dragon Age games, they make the Mass Effect games, and what has BioWare been doing since EA bought them out? Well, they made Mass Effect Andromeda, which a lot of people were unhappy with, and they made Anthem, which is very much out of their wheelhouse.
And you know what? It looked gorgeous. I played it, but the content was wanting. Severely wanting.
Now, these are games that I've not played myself. I only know them by reputation, but that reputation is not great.
No.
Now, to be fair, BioWare was, at the very least, somewhat involved with the recent release of the Mass Effect trilogy that got remastered and put out on multiple platforms recently, not on Nintendo Switch. And everything I've heard about these remasters is that they are brilliant remasters of fantastic games. But it's not exactly original games. It's not like these are new games that they've made since being bought out by EA. So I think whenever it comes to a company being bought out by Electronic Arts, I worry some.
Okay. So Ubisoft made some comments to investors about their earnings.
So the thing that stood out about this, the thing that made me think that this was newsworthy, and a lot of people kind of took some note of this, was that they made some comments about going free to play, and I'll just read the specific comment that they said here.
Okay.
They said that their previous commitment to release 3 to 4 premium quote-unquote AAA games per year is no longer a proper indication of Ubisoft's value creation dynamics. Instead, while it will continue to maintain a high cadence of content delivery, including powerful premium and free-to-play new releases, the goal is to grow audience by widening our brand at the top of the funnel. In other words, convincing more people to try Ubisoft's games by making them free at the entry level. This is a lot of corporate speak, basically saying Ubisoft wants more of that free-to-play loot box dough.
Ooh.
I mean, they didn't use the word loot box,
Ooh.
but whenever
Whenever
one of these companies talks about wanting to go free to play and that kind of stuff, they're talking about wanting to take advantage of free to play monetization.
You mean the microtransactions? And
Microtransactions and loot boxes and that kind of stuff.
Oof.
And the way that they're talking about it is they want to scale down their AAA mega hit games and make it more along the lines of free to play stuff. And
okay. AAA hits from Ubisoft.
Mm-hmm.
Assassin's Creed.
So they do Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, all the Tom Clancy games.
Mm-hmm.
Those are their big mega hit franchises. And the funny thing is one of the series that we haven't seen for a while is the Splinter Cell series. And people are starting to wonder about, like, whether they're even committed to making some of these franchises continue, because the main character of those games, I've forgotten his name. It's Sam something, I think. I want to say Sam Fisher, but I don't know if that's right. I've forgotten. It's been too long since I've played. It's been too long since everybody has played Splinter Cell. And they brought back this character in one of their free-to-play games. And so people are increasingly worried that Ubisoft is just going the way of the microtransaction and free-to-play stuff. And so a lot of people responded to this very poorly. And Ubisoft backtracked after this discussion with investors by saying, they responded to the backlash with, "Our intention is to deliver a diverse lineup of games that players will love across all platforms. We are excited to be investing more in free-to-play experiences. However, we want to clarify that this does not mean reducing our AAA offering." Which, to me, sounds like it runs exactly counter to what they told their investors. They specifically told their investors, we're going to be scaling down our AAA releases so that we can make more free-to-play stuff.
Ubisoft's track record for the past 10 years is concerning for me. I remember falling in love with the Assassin's Creed series, and then remembering that they made a statement of pumping out Assassin's Creed games almost every year. And that, to me, was just a knife to my heart.
See, for me, and I think for a lot of Nintendo Switch owners, Ubisoft has been a pretty good supporter of Nintendo Switch. We've gotten a fair amount of good games on Nintendo Switch, and some good exclusive content, too. Starlink, which, as I understand it, did not sell very well, unfortunately, had some exclusive Star Fox content on Nintendo Switch, and that was a really good, very unique open-world game. There's, of course, Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which, yeah, is a Nintendo Switch exclusive game. Of course, it has Mario in it. And it surprised everyone, not only being a weird combination of franchises, and not only that, but it was weird in that it was a turn-based strategy RPG type game.
Kind of like XCOM.
Yeah, a lot like XCOM. And people looked at this when it was first announced, and they had to wonder, why the heck did anyone think this was a good idea?
But it looked fun.
But then it came out, And it was actually a really good game.
Mm-hmm.
There are actually people clamoring for a sequel, and I don't blame them. It's an excellent game. On top of that, Ubisoft has been pretty good about supporting the Nintendo Switch with ports of some of its older games. I know that Assassin's Creed The Rebel Collection in particular, I loved. That was the one that had Assassin's Creed 4 and Assassin's Creed Rogue. And those two were solid ports of excellent, like some of the highlights of the Assassin's Creed franchise on the Switch.
Okay.
Some other games like Rayman Origins on Nintendo Switch are great. Child of Light on Nintendo Switch is great. So, Nintendo Switch fans have a lot of reason to be really happy with Ubisoft because Ubisoft's done right by Switch owners. But this quote from Ubisoft about how they want to go free to play is really worrisome to a lot of people because it makes people feel like Ubisoft is just starting to turn away from some of their bigger games that a lot of people love.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now to talk about some of the highlights for the games eShopper reviews covered in the month of May 2021. Just a note here, these are not necessarily games released this month, but games reviewed in the last month, and we'll start by talking about the new Pokemon Snap game.
Yes. I know you're super excited about this one because this is one that you were really looking forward to. It's one you've played, so you can actually talk about it. And, I'm completely with you on the same page here. This was definitely my highlight this month. I was expecting it to be good because it looked good. It looked fun. It looked like it was doing a good job of being an excellent sequel to the original N64 classic. And I think it exceeded both of our expectations.
It is so wholesome.
Yeah, it's that.
It's wholesome. It's cute. I love how they treated the Pokemon behaviors in this. The only thing that I would say I dislike about it is that it gets a bit repetitive. After a certain point.
But I mean, that's also kind of the way it works, is you go through the levels repeated times to try and get it just right. I got to get just the right picture. Yeah. I've got to throw this over here so that it attracts this Pokemon, and then it'll get upset with this other Pokemon. They'll have a unique little interaction, or something like that. So it kind of plays out like a puzzle game. But I feel like Nintendo actually took a few steps to make this a little less repetitive this time, because multiple times you'll go through the same level and Pokemon will be doing different things based on how many times you've gone through this level. So you'll go through a level a second time and maybe now there will be a herd of Pokemon right near the entrance when they weren't there before. Yep. Or, maybe now one of the Pokemon that was kind of hiding off in the distance will be a bit closer this time. And it's still repetitive because you'll still see them having repeating the pathing that they had previously, and they kind of have to do that because they have to make it so that you can
learn to expect.
Yeah, so you can have another shot at capturing that one photo that you didn't get the last time. But I feel like they've made some subtle improvements throughout the entire game. They added a new social aspect so you can share photos online with other people.
That is cute, by the way.
Yeah, and graphically, this game is gorgeous. It looks beautiful. It's one of the best looking games on Nintendo Switch right now, in my opinion. The music in this game is fantastic. It's really kind of light and cheerful.
It doesn't get in the way.
And just overall, I was just overjoyed with this game. I think that they did a magnificent job.
Oh, now I want to go home and play it. Oh, okay. So, you also reviewed the Xenoblade games.
I did.
So what thoughts?
So, I have some very strong thoughts about these games in very different ways. So, I wanted to wait to review these games until I had all of them on Nintendo Switch to review. Well, almost all of them. There's one game in the series that has not yet made it to Nintendo Switch. That is Xenoblade Chronicles X. But as I understand it, that's kind of its own separate thing. So if they ever port that to Nintendo Switch, I'll review that at some later time.
Okay.
But I reviewed all of the Xenoblade games that are currently on the Switch. I reviewed them in original release order, which means that the first game that I played was actually the last one that got released here, because Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition was the most recent game to release on Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
This game was originally released on the Nintendo Wii about 10 years ago, and they re-released it on Nintendo Switch. They updated the visuals, they redesigned all the characters, they gave it a higher resolution, not as high as people might have liked. It's a 10-year-old game, but it was actually really, really good looking when it first released. So it didn't need much of an update to look good by modern standards.
Okay.
Still, I wish the resolutions were a bit higher. It's I don't want to say what the resolutions are because I don't remember offhand, but I think it's like 720, something like that. Not great, but it still looks fantastic, and it is still a massive, impressive, really original, really ambitious game with a it has a really great plot, it has really great characters, and it's not an open world game, but the areas that you're in are vast and really unique in the way that they're designed. The idea behind this particular game is that you play a culture that has grown to thrive on this massive continent-sized titan, kind of.
Ooh.
And this titan basically is like a standing corpse that was locked in its final death blow with another standing corpse of another titan, and the culture that grew up on this titan is at war with the culture that you grow up in. That's
kind of morbid.
Well, a little, I guess, but it's a really cool idea, and it means that the territories that you travel to in this game are really uniquely shaped, because it's like, okay, now I'm traveling to the upper leg area, and that kind of thing.
That's morbid. Kind of cool, but morbid.
Well, it makes for some really interesting level geometry. It's a really interesting story, and it's just overall an excellent JRPG. It's got some kind of action-y elements. It's not a good RPG to start with if you're new to JRPGs. It's got some really intricate systems that might be intimidating to newcomers.
Okay.
But it's still a really ambitious and impressive JRPG. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is also super ambitious. I very much enjoy this game, but this one I feel like is very much a love it, hate it experience, because for everything that I love in this game, there's something I hate in this game.
Okay.
And I still include it in my best games for this month, because what it does very, very well, but it also does a lot of things very, very poorly. And on balance, I still say it is such a huge, monumental, ambitious title that if you're a fan of the genre, it's worth looking into, but know that it's going to do some stuff that's going to rub you the wrong way. And to give you an idea, the story is mostly separate from the first game. It takes place in kind of a different world. It has some elements that are connected, and you find out toward the end of the game, but I'm not going to spoil those.
Okay.
In this one, you play in a land where there are these kind of continent-sized dragons that cultures have built themselves up on, and they're flying across a cloud sea. And your character is basically looking for an answer to the problem of eventually these dragons die, dragging these continents down with them, which means that eventually there will be nowhere left for anyone to live. And so he's trying to find a solution to this problem. This is a very, very rudimentary look at the plot. It's a very convoluted plot, very ambitious. I like the plot in this game. I like the characters in this game. I think it has some ambitious combat systems in it, but at the same time, the map system in it is not great. It's difficult to tell sometimes where you need to go. In the original Xenoblade game, they had this thing where sometimes you run across a high-level monster out in the wild, and you'd have to try and avoid them, or, they'd absolutely demolish you. In this game, they take that up a notch, and it's just like, you could just be traveling from point A to point B, just like where you're supposed to go next in the story. And these creatures could wander into your path and just completely demolish you when you're not even trying to fight them.
Wow.
And this really frustrated me. I feel like there's a lot of little elements in this game that are just going to rub people the wrong way. And I still include it with my best games that I reviewed this month because it is an incredibly good game in many respects. But at the same time, it is not a game for everyone. And I feel like I absolutely need to highlight that. It's really, really great, but also it's really, really going to piss off a lot of people.
Okay. The other game that you mentioned as one of the best games is Cat Quest 2.
Ah, yes. So, in addition, Cat Quest 2 is... It's funny, where I mentioned Xenoblade Chronicles before as being, kind of convoluted and complex in a good way. I really like it. Cat Quest 2 is an action RPG that is extremely simplified. I think I've heard someone refer to it as like baby's first action RPG, and I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's that simple, but at the same time, it's super family friendly. It's super easy for a beginner to get into. It really simplifies everything into, like, for example, if you get a new piece of armor, there are different classes of armor, and if you already have that armor class, what it does instead is it's like, oh, you already have this armor class, we're just going to upgrade the armor you're currently wearing.
Okay, wait. What is Cat Quest 2 about, though?
So Cat Quest 2, Cat Quest 1 I also reviewed this month, but I like Cat Quest 2 a bit better.
Okay.
Because it has really good co-op play in it.
Okay.
This is an action RPG where you're playing an anthropomorphic cat, or in the second game, it's an anthropomorphic cat and an anthropomorphic dog going around in kind of a fantasy RPG kind of setting, and it's full of little cat and dog puns, like the villain in one of the games is called the Persecutor.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, tons of puns like that. It's really cutesy. It's really simple. Like I said, really family friendly, and it's really fun. They do a really good job of kind of scaling down what you expect from an action RPG and making it accessible to anyone. And I think they did a great job with both of these games, but in particular, the second game, I think adding in those co-op elements really just was fantastic.
Okay, so the last best game, which you also mentioned is a noteworthy review, is Subnautica Below Zero.
So I reviewed both of the Subnautica games this month. These were also released this month. I actually reviewed a lot of the games that came out this month in this month. Both New Pokemon Snap and the Subnautica games came out this month.
For the Switch, Subnautica is on PC.
For the Nintendo Switch, I should specify. Well, Subnautica has been out on other platforms for years now. I think it originally came out in 2018. Subnautica Below Zero, though, that is a new release across multiple platforms that came out simultaneously on the Nintendo Switch. Now, Subnautica, I wouldn't say that's one of the best games I played this month. It was very good, and the port to Nintendo Switch was good with caveats.
Okay.
The Nintendo Switch, it's no surprise to anyone. Everyone already knows Nintendo Switch is less powerful than all the other platforms that are out right now. And that definitely shows in the port of Subnautica. There was a lot of pop-in the original Subnautica on other platforms, even more so on Nintendo Switch. There's a lot more underwater fog. It's still a gorgeous game, and it's a solid port. The Nintendo Switch version of Subnautica, I don't want to malign it too much, because yes, it looks worse than the other versions. Still looks pretty good considering how major an open world kind of exploration survival game this is. However, Subnautica Below Zero, I was genuinely surprised. This is a newer game. It is the sequel to Subnautica. And despite that it is a new game coming out simultaneously with all the other platforms, I actually think it's a better port than the original Subnautica.
That's strange yet amazing.
Well, I think in part it's because the new areas look a lot more distinct. I think the visuals in this game look a lot prettier, and the original Subnautica was already a good-looking game. Subnautica Below Zero, I think, looks even better. I think the port does a much better job of the visuals. The pop-in is less noticeable. There's a little slowdown in a few places, but it's not terrible. And on top of that, honestly, I think it's a better game. And in part, that's because the opening area is a bit less harsh. I think it's a bit easier on newcomers. The difficulty spike is a bit less of a problem. And if you're playing these games for the first time, I think that whether or not you play them in order or out of order depends on how much the story is important to you, because there is a story to these games, and the first one technically takes place before the second one.
Okay.
But if the story is not as important to you, honestly, I kind of think the second game is the better one to start with, because it's a little bit easier on newcomers.
Okay.
And thankfully, both of these games on the Nintendo Switch have options where you can turn off some of the survival elements, like the need to constantly be looking for food and water. You can turn that off so you're just focusing on looking for supplies to upgrade your equipment and stuff.
That's pretty cool.
Overall, I think Subnautica, excellent port. Subnautica Below Zero, even better, and really visually stunning game. Just overall great game.
Okay. So, on to the worst games.
All right.
Spellcasting Perfectly Portable Edition.
Oh,
some of these games were actually part of your, like, Cute and Fuzzy Week.
Oh, yeah. Well, some of the hidden gems were part of the Cute and Fuzzy Week, too. We'll get to that in a bit.
Okay. So, Spellcasting Perfectly Portable Edition. What was bad about it?
For Spellcasting Perfectly Portable Edition, picture everything you love about Harry Potter, and now picture a game making you hate it. Spellcasting, the idea behind this game is, very much like Harry Potter, you've been invited to a magical school where you can learn magic spells.
No, don't do this.
And this takes the form of you're tracing symbols on the touchscreen on your Nintendo Switch. It is not playable in docked mode. You have to play it portable, which already is going to limit its
likability.
Limit its how much you're going to want to play it.
Okay.
But it's like your reward for tracing a symbol is, okay, now you get to trace more symbols. And okay, now you get to trace symbols without having the symbols to trace. You have to do it from memory. And that already in and of itself feels like homework. But to make matters worse, it's not even good at detecting where you're tracing. So you could be tracing it perfectly fine and still be told, nope, you screwed up, start over.
Oh, that's horrible.
And it's not fun. It's torturous. It's taking what should be a magical experience and making it just
dumb.
Not even just dumb, just frustrating, and it's like punishing you for wanting to find magic on the Nintendo Switch.
Okay, what was bad about pet care?
So I feel like I have to preface this one with a bit of an explanation, which is this. Pet Care is a game that was designed for very, very young children. This is like a pre-kindergarten type of game. And I feel like there's going to be this expectation of, well, of course it's not good. It's for very young children. And when I review a game, I try to keep in mind the target audience. I am not ragging on this game because it was designed for very young children.
Okay.
I'm totally cool with that. Like, you know, Carmen Sandiego, Math Blaster, those types of educational games, I get it. It's designed for young kids. That's cool. The problem with this game is, even keeping in mind its target audience, it's very poorly done. It's very lazily designed. This is a game that, for absolutely no reason, requires a touchscreen to play. You should be able to play it with a controller, but you can't, because they made it lazy. Secondly, okay, the concept behind this game is you're given a picture of an animal and then pictures of multiple types of food, match the type of food to the animal based on what type of food it's going to eat. You know what? For a game for young kids, that's fine, understandable. Okay, what type of food does this type of animal eat? That kind of thing. Fine. But, number one, this is a game called Pet Care, and a lot of the animals in this game aren't even pets. What type of food does a moose eat? Why is a moose in a game called Pet Care? You're trying to teach kids that you can have a moose as a pet?
Maybe in Canada. No.
I doubt it.
No.
I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, Canadians. Maybe you can keep a moose as a pet.
Actually, they're very much avoided in Canada.
I don't know. But it struck me as very odd that this non-pet type of thing would be in a game called Pet Care. Mm-hmm. Another thing is, okay, which of these foods is a dog going to eat? And it'll have multiple foods, including a T-bone steak. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like a healthy... Like, wouldn't you want to encourage your kid to be giving a dog food? Mm-hmm. I mean, technically, yes, dogs are carnivores, but that doesn't mean that you want to be encouraging them to feed them just any meat. I feel like...
and besides, I would rather have the T-bone steak.
Okay, fine. But I'm just looking at this like, if you're trying to be an educational game, you are teaching kids bad lessons. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to teach your kid, what does this animal eat? What does that animal eat? Some of these foods are like, maybe you don't want to be encouraging them to feed their dog the steak from the refrigerator. Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't want to be encouraging your kid that, that moose over there should be treated like a pet. You should go over and pet it.
And then it will trample your face in.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, okay, I understand. Game for very young children, fine. Lower my expectations, but I'm not lowering them so low that it's totally cool that it's teaching these kids terrible lessons about pets. And on top of that, it's a really shoddily made, kind of lazy game that doesn't even have some basic stuff like being able to play on your screen.
Yeah.
So...
Okay, that's fair. Cedar's Puzzle Reboot. Why was that bad?
So this is a puzzle platformer with a lot of physics-based puzzles, and it's just, how do I put this? There's a lot of trial and error in this game. It's not very well made, so a lot of the puzzles that you need to work past, you'll be trying again and again, not because you don't know how to do it, but because you're wanting the physics to get it right so that you can pass the stupid puzzle and move on. And on top of that, it's an ugly-looking game. It doesn't have much going for it, and there's so many other good puzzle platformers on Nintendo Switch. I'm just like, there's no reason to play this one.
Okay.
Move on.
All right. And what about Dot Cat?
Dot Cat came out fairly recently. I don't recall if it came out this last month or within the last few months, but it came out in 2021. And this is a game that actually looks visually enticing. It has this kind of retro pixel art style that looks nice, but it's a platformer that's just, it's not a good platformer. The hit detection is bad, the level design is bad, and again, we're talking about a Nintendo platformer. There are tons of platformers on Nintendo Switch. Mm-hmm. Do not play this terrible platformer just because it looks nice.
Okay. Hidden Gems. Mm-hmm. This game you got me to try, which I thought was very fun. Radical Rabbit Stew.
So again, we have another game with a pixel art style, but this one is actually really fun. It's really original. It has kind of this retro arcadey feel with sort of puzzle elements. The idea is you are playing a space chef who is fighting a horde of evil space bunnies. This is family friendly, so they're all cutesy, and you're
trying for the fact that they're trying to kill you.
Well, and you're fighting them by using your chef spoon to knock them into their cooking pot shaped spaceships. And you're going through each level trying not to get eaten by these rabbits and trying to figure out how to knock each of them into their little spaceships. It's a really cute, clever kind of theme. It's a really original way of playing because you're like ricocheting them off walls to knock them into their pots.
Cute.
And it's adorable. It's fun. It has a fun multiplayer mode, although I wish there was more content to it.
Maybe they'll add more. Maybe.
And maybe. It has a really nice level builder in it, but unfortunately you can't use the levels you create in it in the multiplayer mode. You can't share levels online. I feel like they could have taken that one little step further to make this an incredible experience by allowing you to use your created levels in more stuff. But even without that feature, I still feel like this is a really fun game. It's not really like anything else out there. Really well worth checking out.
Oh, yeah. All right. Next one is Regalia of Men and Monarchs.
This one really surprised me. I had not heard of this game prior to this. You know, this is part of the reason I do this, is to discover these little hidden gems that I've never even heard of that catch me just out of nowhere. And this is a strategy RPG. It actually reminds me a lot of the most recent Fire Emblem game, Fire Emblem Three Houses, because you have the strategy RPG elements, but at the same time, you are managing the growth and development of your own little army of characters, and you have to do that within a time frame. You have goals that need to be accomplished by a certain time, and so with each kind of day that passes within this calendar, you have to decide, am I using this day to develop the skills of this army member? Am I using it to build up my shop at home so I have better items to work with? Or am I using it to fight enemies so that I can accomplish the goals that need to be done by a certain time or I lose the game?
Okay.
And it's a particularly difficult strategy RPG, so if you're new to the genre, I would not say this is a good one to start with.
Ooh.
But if you have played other games in this genre, especially if you played Fire Emblem Three Houses and you're like, I want something that's kind of a little like that, this is well worth looking up. It's got a lot of variety to it. You can develop your army in different ways. I just thoroughly enjoyed this game. It caught me out of nowhere, and I thought it was a fantastic entry on a genre that's full of great entries on the Nintendo Switch. This one is well worth checking out.
Okay. Home Sheep Home Farmageddon Party Edition. This is such a funny title.
So this is based on the Shaun the Sheep franchise, which itself is a spin-off of the Wallace and Gromit animated shorts, like the little clay animated shorts. And it used to be that movie licensed titles were a surefire bet that it was going to be a bad game. But I feel like that has changed a lot over the course of the last decade or two. Now it's entirely possible that one of these licensed games will be good. And even though the Shaun the Sheep franchise is clearly aimed at kind of younger kids, this game really surprised me. This game is kind of almost like two games in one, because on the one hand, you have a co-op puzzle platformer where you have three different sheep of three different sizes. You have a little baby sheep, you have Shaun, who's kind of a middle-sized sheep, and then you have kind of a larger, more heavy-set sheep. And each of them have different abilities, and using these abilities, you need to get them from the start of each stage to the end. And it's kind of physics-based, so like you might use the heavy sheep to weigh something down. You use the little sheep to slip into places that the others can't fit into, and Shaun has a higher jump. And they've done some really creative level design to, actually make you think about the different abilities each of these sheep have. It's a really good co-op puzzle platformer, but then on top of that, they've added a really good party game to it, where you have these different platformer party games where you need to survive the longest on this level where it's trying to toss you off, or you need to, there's a number of different things that it does. I think there's something like 10 different party games or something.
Oh, that's cool. cool.
And both of these elements are done really well. I feel like anyone who's a fan of the franchise is absolutely going to love this game. And even if you have never even heard of Shaun the Sheep, you don't need to have watched any of the TV shows or movies or anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is a fun, family-friendly platformer, puzzle game, and a fun, family-friendly party game that I think just anybody is going to enjoy, I think.
All right. Last hidden gem. The Big Journey.
The Big Journey was one of the games that I reviewed for my Cute Week, because even though it's not in the title,
really?
This is a game about a little cat that eats, what was it, dumplings, like dim sum.
Uh-huh.
And this game, you can tell it was clearly directly inspired by a PlayStation series called Loco Roco.
Mm-hmm.
That series, you had cute little blobs that could join together to grow bigger, and instead of moving the blobs directly, you were shifting the level back and forth, so you're changing the balance of the level to roll them along, and you could flick them to jump up the blobs. It's kind of a cute original way to do a platformer. And this game controls very similarly to that. But instead of joining up blobs, you're feeding a cat and making him bigger as the level goes along. And it's pretty easy platformer. It has to be fairly easy because you're controlling it indirectly.
Yeah.
And it's very cutesy, very family friendly, and it has a really lovely soundtrack. And I feel like if you have played any of the Loco Roco games and are looking for something kind of like that on the Nintendo Switch, definitely check out The Big Journey. If you've never played Loco Roco before and are looking for kind of a sort of easygoing, unique sort of platformer, maybe a bit more skewed younger, this is definitely going to hit that target really well. Just really good, really great presentation, very cutesy, fun.
Okay. Normally, this is where we discuss user-submitted questions for the month, but this month we don't have any questions to discuss. But we're presenting a second special eShopperReviews 2021 pre-show podcast where we look at the upcoming E3 2021 and Summer Games Fest 2021 events. So please look forward to that. However, if you want to submit questions for next month's podcast, donate any amount on our Patreon page and submit a question on our monthly call out, and we will bring it up in our next podcast. And that wraps things up for this month's eShopperReviews podcast. Again, we want to thank all of our patrons on Patreon for contributing. Patron donors are the first ones to gain access to these podcasts, and if you are interested in becoming a donor, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. And once again, if you're curious to read any of the reviews or content mentioned in this podcast, you can find it on the eShopperReviews subreddit at reddit.com/r/eShopperReviews. Once again, this has been Jen Ip
and Jake McNeil.
We'll see you next month, and in the meantime, we both hope you found this content helpful and enjoyed some good games. Catch you all next time.
Later.